Well, ladies and gentlemen, super excited for our DSEF broadcast today. If you're just joining us for the first time, welcome. My name is Ben Dixon, president of the Direct Selling Executives Forum. I'm joined by Gail Ansado, our host for the Women in Leadership Conference. And today we have a treat for you with having Mrs. Andrea Waltz here to join us today. Now, when we were putting together the session today, I'm going to give you some background on Andrea before we kick off. We were discussing how to create a culture of prospecting. Sometimes prospecting has all these weird connotations to it amongst your community. And we said, we want to talk about how do you create a culture of people daily prospecting? And we were thinking about who we should invite out. We knew we wanted to invite out Andrea Waltz. And so let me just read for a moment. So for those of you that don't know Andrea is the co-founder of Courage Crafters, Inc. and co-author of the best-selling book, Go for No. Yes is the destination, no is how you get there. For almost 2 decades, Andrea has been teaching people in virtually every business and industry how to think and feel differently about failure, rejection, and the word no to achieve their goals and dreams. She's spoken to over a dozen of some of the most recognizable names in direct sales, such as Forever Living, The Pampered Chef, Ruby Ribbon, Plexus, many others. Gosh, some of your staff, we got a bunch of Pampered Chef folks coming up here in the series. So we'll have some of those executives on too, if you're listening on Spotify. The book Go for No reached #1 on Amazon's sales and selling list in 2010 and has remained in the top 10 of the MLM list for 13 years, having sold over 500,000 copies. Andrea, thank you so much for being here today. It is a treasure to have you on.
I am so glad to do this with you guys. This is awesome.
All right. Well, the show is Gail's. She's the moderator and she's in charge. So let's go ahead and jump into our official kickoff. Gail, the floor is yours.
All right. Welcome to the DSEF, everybody. Welcome, Andrea. And today we're going to talk about how to create a prospecting culture. And in the dynamic and competitive world of direct sales, prospecting is the lifeblood of success. And it's the foundation upon which your business grows, expands, and reaches new heights. Now, many times when the topic is brought up, we see eyes roll and members feel overwhelmed. How and where would you encourage an executive team to start creating a culture of daily prospecting?
Okay, there's so much to this. So let's talk about a few of the top key things. First of all, we have to remember that direct selling is called direct selling. And I feel like that has gone out the window because selling has such a bad reputation. We all know that in society in general. The salesperson is always the butt of every joke in a movie, right? There's always some creepy, over-the-top used car salesman in the movies or whatever. And so they're always looked down upon. And so what's happened over the last 20 years in direct sales is we still call it direct sales, but now we're transitioning over to other language so that we don't have the word sales, because sales is seen as somehow something to be ashamed of, something that we don't do. And so from a cultural standpoint, there's got to be a reframe, I think, fundamentally with this word selling. It's got to lose this negative connotation. I get why the language is changing, and there's other ways of, there's sharing the opportunity and there's affiliate marketing and all of those things. And in many cases, what we want to do is we want the product to sell itself, right? We want the product to be so good that all people have to do is just kind of hold it up, maybe say a couple things, and the product sells itself. But if that were true, then we should just have all the products in a vending machine and be done with it and not have any people associated with that. And the people, right, are so important. And the people are the ones that tell the stories of change. And so from a cultural standpoint, the first thing is, I think, stop distancing yourself from being a sales culture. Now, the second thing, though, is you have to define really what prospecting means. What does it mean? And one of my favorite definitions, actually, and I didn't come up with it, but my husband, Richard, and I, our writing team, we co-wrote a book with Ray Higdon called Go for No for Network Marketing. And in that book, Ray Higdon says prospecting is active. You're reaching out to potential customers and having one-on-one conversations. It can be online or offline, cold market or warm market, meaning people that you know or people that you don't know. It's you reaching out to an individual. And this is, of course, in contrast to marketing, which is more passive. You are doing things for an unnamed individual, for a general audience. You're making reels on Instagram, you're making posts, whatever, you're tweeting, it doesn't matter, right? That's all marketing. And so I think to have the prospecting conversation, we've got to be very clear on what that is. And so it really is telling the story to individuals that we either know or don't know. And the I don't know them is where it gets really scary. And so there's a lot of fear and hesitation that has to be dealt with as a culture. And by the way, I warned you, I can go on and on about this. So at any point that you want to stop me and interject, please, I'll try not to go for too long. But from a cultural standpoint, so once we define what prospecting is, we have to mitigate the issues around prospecting. So it's going out to a named individual. But the problem is that whether it's somebody that you know, a friend from high school, a family member, whatever, or a total stranger, your neighbor, maybe somebody kind of in the middle, right? A neighbor down the street, all of these fears come up. And so the leadership has got to help, especially their top line leaders, help the rest of the field understand a couple of things about prospecting. And the biggest thing is that when you prospect, you are not looking to close someone, right? You're not looking to create the entire sale from beginning to end, one transaction, because when people think they have to go out and sell, then it's like, right? It's like me saying like, go next door to your neighbor and try to sell them a car. You would freak out. You would say, I don't think I can do that. If I said, go to your neighbor and find out some information about your neighbor, about when they might be looking for a new car and some things around that, right? What's their current transportation needs? What's going on with them? How's the current car running? All that. And so it's about gathering information and telling a story. So if we frame it that way, then it's not you have to go out and sell. And I think from a go for no standpoint, which is all about being willing to hear that no, not expecting it, but accepting it as part of the process. That's another big cultural shift, right? Is to understand that a lot of times when you go out and you do tell the story, you do share some details about the product, you're going and you ask, hey, would you like to try a sample? Hey, would you like to just get started, right? And try try our best-selling product. Does it sound, does this sound like something that could help you based on everything that we've talked about today? And if you get a no, this is not the end of the world. That is part of the process.
And what's so good about what you're saying there, Andrea, we have to get this, is like when we don't call it selling anymore and we mystify it all, we're not clear anymore in our communication. We go to these people and kind of hem and haw, and they don't even know your desire for the conversation when you show up, when it's this mystical, no objective communication. And the beautiful part about what you just said is we don't expect it to be a no. So you go in with expectations of like hoping you're serving this person and it's a yes, but you're okay if it's a no. It means that you're actually asking a real question. Like you're asking a question, would you like to try a sample? You're asking a question, would you like to go to a webinar and learn more? Hey, I saw this thing the other day and was just curious. It reminded me of you. Would you like to check it out? You're making a direct ask. And so many times when we try to soften this thing and we try to mystify this thing, we have all these people out there, just chatting, and you almost feel like the prospect has to say, so why did you reach out to me today? Like they have to pull it out of them for anything positive to happen here. And that's the exact opposite of what true prospecting is. True prospecting is, hey, I know you weren't expecting my call today. I know you weren't expecting me today, but I thought of you when I saw this. I was curious, X, Y, Z. Yes or no? Yes. And it's okay.
Right.
It's okay.
Right.
For it to be yes or no. It's not
Would you be open? Would you be open to taking a look at this? Would you be open to trying this? Would you be open to learning more? Right. And so, and I stole that from Ray Higdon as well. I mean, he's taught me a lot about prospecting when it comes to,
they're so wonderful.
right? When it comes to
Jessica, good people.
He's so good.
Yeah.
when it comes to direct selling. So anyway, that's kind of, there's a lot of other cultural things, and I'll just add one more too, and that is, and this comes from on high, not always celebrating results, but making sure that you also celebrate people's activities as well, and rewarding people and recognizing them when they get outside their comfort zone and they do have those conversations, and they take a chance and they take a risk, and they're building their confidence and their courage, as opposed to, I know we're very good in the industry about having the awards banquets and the recognition, but that's all past behavior, and that's all results. Real-time recognition of behaviors, that's trickier, but that's something that they can work with their leaders on, about teaching leaders how to recognize the activity, not just the results.
And technology's changed today too. I think we've learned a lot. I know there's been some major shifts in the work I do outside. We have DSEF, and then I serve also as CEO at NAX. I'm a software provider in the space. We don't really talk about that much at DSEF, but we saw a major shift in adoption, just because you brought it up, of tools and adoptions of technology, because of exactly what you just said. When you move from celebrating, you got to write that down, folks who are listening today. When you move from just recognizing the results, just recognizing the rank advancement or the sales commission or the top producer, to the people who are living out the daily habits. Like here we are, we're talking about creating a culture of daily prospecting today. We got to the place even in technology where we had people start committing to daily goals and showing who is on a streak and who is not, and who's actually living in integrity with their own goals each day, just so it would be easier for the sponsors to recognize that, to Andrea's point. And I think that's a perfect thought. We've seen that create adoption in technology and tools across the whole space, is if you break it down the daily steps and you recognize the people who are actually doing it daily, well, what do you know? Other people are going to say, well, how do I get recognized for doing it daily? Oh, well, I guess I'm going to have to do it daily then. And that's what we see in a big way. And I actually think that one of the forum questions has us right there. So.
All right. The next question is, what are your favorite tips for taking people who have never done daily prospecting before and moving them forward into action?
Yeah,
Exactly.
a couple tips. Well, I'm gonna get to the first tip right off the bat because it's so important. Go out there and fail. That's tip number one, because that's the biggest fear that people have. This isn't going to work. I'm going to follow my faith. It's going to be awkward. I'm going to get a no. And so that's the whole part of what the go for no mindset is your job is to go out and be willing to share your story about the products, see if people are open, and you're going to hear no a lot. And it's okay that you fail. You see, in other words, you see that as a failure. I'm not saying failure is bad. I'm saying that people see it as a failure. And so that's what we want to do, is we want people to go out and intentionally increase their failure rate and see that they survived, and see that, oh, this is not so bad. Because that's the whole thing about prospecting. That's why people hate it, is they see it as, I'm going to have to do all of this stuff. I'm going to have all these horrible conversations and do all this work. I'm going to get nothing but no's. And that is not true. It's true a little bit in the beginning as you get started and as you get better, but you see, within the no's, the yeses are buried. And so, but you can't just go out and say, well, I want to hear nothing but yeses. So you've got to embrace the no. You have to embrace that yes and no are opposite sides of the same coin, right? That you can't have one without the other. You can't have more yeses without getting more no's. They're inextricably linked. And so the first step is with understanding that is the mindset of, I'm not going out to be perfect. If I get a few no's, it's not a big deal. It's part of the process. I can't give up just because I get no. And that's what happens with a lot of people's prospecting efforts, is they go out, they talk to a couple people and they go like, prospecting doesn't work. I just get nothing but no's. Yes, the no's are out there, but the yeses are buried within those no's. And so the second piece of advice that's so important is, and this is where the organization comes in too, is get clarity on who you want to talk to, right? We have a tendency, I think, a lot of people, especially when you have a great product, to say, well, everyone should use this. Technically, everyone can take this. Everyone has an ache or pain. They should take this, CBD gummy for. It works for everybody. And that is so true. except that doesn't help somebody prospecting, because then
Exactly.
it becomes overwhelming. So if
Yeah.
somebody says, I'm just going to focus on this particular problem that I'm trying to solve, because our product solves probably a lot of problems, but let me focus on this one problem it solves and go at this and find people who have that problem. Where are they? Where do they hang out? What do I know about this problem? And how can I engage with them and ask them a couple questions about that problem and get to know them and see if I can, create that match, see if they're open to looking at our product in order to solve that. Or even if it's, hey, maybe your problem is you just like to make some extra money. You just
Mhm.
like to pay off your
Mhm.
car 2 years earlier, right?
Mhm.
Maybe that's your big problem. And so that's something that you can help people solve as well. And so
Love
the
that.
whole key to this, right, is just to pick some kind of lane. Because if it's all the lanes, it becomes overwhelming and you don't know who to talk to and you don't know how to talk to them.
Yeah. Well, and Andrew, you nailed something really important. You talk about these pools of people that already exist who have a problem. And there's an exercise we've walked people through too that I think is critical as you're listening as an executive here in the session and saying, okay, how do we implement this in our world? One part of identifying those pools of people is it's okay, and it's actually preferred if it's a pool of people who are already solving that problem. So you want to think about this real quick. Many times you think, oh, I want people who have a problem. No, you don't, because there's lots of people in this world who have a problem but are not willing to do anything to solve it. So just think about that for a second. There's plenty of people who are like, I'm overweight, and that's a problem, but they're not doing anything to solve it. And then there's a different set of people who are like, yeah, I'm overweight, but I've taken up a new workout routine, trying some new supplements, doing a new diet, working on, measuring my water intake each day. Which one do you want to talk to about your new product? The person who's over here, yeah, I got the problem, but it's not my fault. I'm not doing anything to solve it. Or the sprinter who's like, hey, I'm showing up every day trying these 6, 7 things to solve my problem. Not there yet, but I'm working on it. It's easy, right? Gang, when you hear that,
Exactly.
get the
Yes,
action taker,
yes.
get the sprinter, the
And
pools of the people who are doing
yeah,
something.
right. That's such a critical
Oh,
distinction. You were absolutely right. Yeah,
oh.
that is a very good point. That is why when you go online and
Mm,
you can jump into a group of people who joined, say, a weight loss group, or I just joined this fitness thing that's put on by a lady here in my community. I was like, all right, I'm going to join.
nice.
I actually got sucked in because they had a pizza party. So I was like,
There
okay,
you
man.
go.
Why they were doing that, there's a fitness group. But the point is, right, there's all these communities. And
Yeah,
so you look for those affinities and people
yeah,
who are going in the direction you want. Really good call
yeah.
out on that distinction. Yeah.
Our next question is, what technology do you see as valuable when you're creating a culture of prospecting and
Mm,
managing a pipeline?
Yeah. So my example for this is that imagine you have a great conversation with somebody at an event. You go home, and you're thinking about them, and 3 days later comes time for you to reach out to them, and you forgot their last name. You think you remembered their first name. You
mm.
jotted their phone number down on some random piece of paper that you threw in your handbag, and now you can't remember it. And that is super frustrating. Now imagine you did that, and you did that 10 times over a week period with no system. And it's literally like digging up pieces of gold, but then leaving them in the soil and hoping that you'll remember exactly where they are to pluck them out of the soil later.
In the
No.
sand. Yeah,
Right
with
in the
water.
sand. It's like, yeah, you know, when you find the little piece of gold, you don't just leave it in the soil and rely on your horrible
Yeah.
memory to where it was. So you have to pick it up.
Oh,
And that's
so
why,
good.
of course, having a system is so important. And there's two keys to that. Of course, it's having that system, and then being able to use it. So having a system in
Mm, 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 mm.
anything, in any business is critical, but especially in prospecting, for
Yeah.
capturing the names of those people, being able to not only get their name, but get a couple pieces of information, because this is the beginning of this process. Turn
Yeah.
your invested time into profitable time. How do you do that? By
Mm,
building a relationship. And one of the things that prospecting has as a, one of the big knocks on the industry and in prospecting in general is, oh, it's just a numbers game. Like Go for No has often been labeled like, oh, those are the people that just, everybody's a number. It's just a numbers game. Well, one of my favorite sayings, and actually a lady named Kai Deering said it in the Go for No for Network Marketing book. She said, yeah, it is a numbers game, but people aren't numbers. And I love that, because of course people aren't numbers, but how are you going to remember those key pieces of information? Like, hey, this person is interested in that, married with 3 kids, things that you kind of want to remember about them. You've got to capture that. You're never going to remember if you have any kind of prospecting whatsoever happening. Even if you do it once a week, you're never going to remember everybody. So you have to have a system to capture that information and to remind you, hey, it's been 3 months since you've touched base with this person. What's changed? We've new products coming out, things that you can talk about. And so, it's absolutely critical. A bunch of Post-it notes all over your desk, and I speak from experience, is not a system.
That's so true, Andrea. And I love what you're sharing is that part of, hey, you have to be disciplined enough to use a system. One of the tips of getting them into the system up front, and I'll just share this one for free, is I stopped carrying business cards. I don't carry paper business cards. I don't carry metal business cards. What I ended up doing, and this is something I've used both in business and as elder at my church. I've used this all over any relationship. But by stopping carrying business cards was the first key to me honoring and caring. If you were Andrea saying, she's like, people are people, so you have to care enough to take a moment to write down what they said and take a moment to remember how to specifically serve them. But one of the tools, as a quick one, I stopped carrying business cards intentionally, and I just saved my own name in my cell phone, picture of my face, my email address, my link to book a time with me, just save it as a contact. And when I would meet someone, instead of handing them a business card, I'd be like, you know what, John, let me text you my V card, my virtual card. Let me text it to you. It wasn't any special technology, gang. I would go to my own name in my own phone. This is back when I had Blackberries. It works on your iPhone today, Samsung, anything. I would tap my name and press share contact and say, what's your cell? Let me text you my V card. I'm now getting their cell phone. Okay. I'm now getting their number and not hoping they call me on my business card later. And then that's where I get to do that note where it's not rude. I literally get to text it to them, and I can say, hey, John, it was great to hear about those three things. And I send it off to them. And then when I'm out of that conversation and I have all these numbers not saved in my phone and these notes, I can look at what I text them and say, oh yeah, that was John with his daughter. John, it was great to connect with you about your daughter, right? I can then go save that in my phone and then add it to my CRM or whatever technology I'm using. If you're using an app with your company or you're using a web-based CRM, I can then go load it into that system and mark when I should call them next, if it's 24 hours, 36 hours, whatever that is. But you gotta, I hope you heard the root of what Andrea is saying. Is like, even though it's a numbers game, you have to care. Like, no one buys from humans that don't care. You have to care enough to listen. And if you're not listening, people don't feel loved and they're not going to want to do business with you. And it doesn't matter how good your stuff is. If they find you annoying and don't think you care, your numbers game is going to be a lot harder than Andrea's numbers game and mine. because we're going to show up and actually listen and take the time to take notes and remember that when we connect again. And so hear that, gang. Andrea's that was on fire.
Our next question, and our last question, is actually, we all know that we'll face rejection when prospecting. As Andrea said, we go for no. What would you share with listeners as they help their members to overcome rejection? And I know we touched a little bit on this earlier, but is there any piece of advice to our listeners that you would love to share when dealing with rejection in particular?
Yeah, Gail, we did touch on it earlier, but by the tiniest fraction. There's so much more to unpack here. Yeah, so a couple things. Now, first of all, rejection will be around forever, and we're hardwired to not get rejected as people. We're collaborative. We work best in groups. We all know that. That's why I think, being locked down and all, everything that everybody went through and how psychologically challenging that was, because we're used to hanging out in groups and collaborating. So no wonder. And challenges, because of that, our brains are very much against getting rejected. And so a few things. One is just to remind people that when fear comes up and when the discomfort comes up, that is just the brain's way of protecting you, thinking that you're doing something wrong, not understanding that it's the 21st century, and that kind of to have this abundance mentality and not a lack mentality of, oh, I can't get this no, understanding that there's plenty of people to talk to. And that's so key in prospecting, that this is the beginning, that this is the opening of the relationship. You want to find people who are interested, open to help them solve a problem, that that the no's are going to happen, that's just a part of it. And whatever fear arises is something that you have to pass through. When I start prospecting and I get a couple no's, again, and I know I mentioned this, is to turn around and go back home. That's
Sure.
not, it's to keep going, right? To keep going. And if you think about it, you think about people at the mall who are standing behind a counter at the cosmetic counter, and people pass them all day long and look and turn and don't say anything. They are rejected constantly. The billboards, the magazines, the stuff, that the messaging that's out there about traditional products. So we'll take some kind of traditional product that you'd find in a Macy's department store behind the makeup counter. Those products are being marketed and shared to people all day long through print, ad, walking through the Macy's, right? And so people have been exposed to those products dozens of times, if not hundreds of times. So you come along with this great new cosmetic line, and how many times has somebody been exposed to it? And the answer is
None.
zero,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so how many times do you, when you go to buy something, need to see something before you kind of do the whole know, like, and trust thing, where you go like, oh, this is interesting, I should take a look at this. And the answer is dozens of times.
Yep.
So while you're not a billboard, you are a walking storytelling machine. And you have to understand that the number of times that you expose somebody to your product can't be one time. It's like an actor going on one audition and going like, okay, I went on the one audition, I didn't get the part. All right, I tried. I'm going to try something else now. No, they try hundreds of times, different auditions. And so I don't want people to hear this, and there's two kind of hats to wear. Obviously, I'm speaking almost to a consultant or distributor in this moment, but this is from the executive perspective, this is what's going on with your people. And so it's not to say that they have to beat their head against the wall and hear no forever, but you have to go into it with an understanding of exposure. And so as excited as people get, and this is the challenge for executives, as excited as people get, and they're like, this skincare is amazing, I'm going to go out and tell everybody I know about this. They're sold on it. And when they don't get yes immediately, what they think is, oh, there's something wrong with the product, or there's something wrong with me. And so we have to inoculate people. We have to prepare them for the reality of business, which is, hey, when you are out there marketing, when you are out there prospecting, your goal is to expose people to this through your marketing, through your social media posts, your active prospecting out to individuals. Everything that you do is of benefit, because it's like one more exposure. So that what people start to do is they start to say, my activity matters. And all the activities, even if I don't get the yes result, are incrementally building my business, because I'm exposing people to this message one more time. I'm contacting this person one more time to say, hey, you're not going to believe it, we've got this two for one thing on this product. Now's the best time to take advantage of it. Every time we do that, it's creating another connection. You're building that relationship a little bit more. You're exposing that person. And we all know that's what this business is about. But I think if we can prepare people so that they mentally understand that that's the reality, and that they see that every activity has value, that it wasn't just, I did 100 things, nothing happened, and I didn't get any yeses. Yeah, but you did 100 things. Congratulations. Keep going. This is part of the process because, or if you want, just go hang out at the mall for 8 hours and have to stand behind a counter and not be able to be there with your kids and not be able to go out for the afternoon and do the errands you want to do, and be beholden to somebody else and be indoors all the time. I mean, you could do that too, or you could do it this way, which feels a little more difficult, but you have freedom to design it the way you want.
So important, gang, as you hear this, the way you set expectations is so critical. I just want to hear this. We got a lot of executives listening here today, your peers, and I see many of you shoot yourselves in the foot at times because you try to soften it too much. I want you to hear what Andrea is saying here. You can't go on stage in your videos and say like, hey, we know selling's hard, but at our company, selling's easy. Or hey, we know selling's really hard, but at our company, you don't even have to sell, you just share, Well, you'd just be on Amazon if that was the case. You wouldn't even have run a direct selling company that had to tell stories. You would just be on a platform. So here's the thing. Yes, we have systems to follow. Yes, we have tools. Yes, we have systems that make it simple for you to share if you do the work, right? And to follow up and everything else. And there's technology. But gang, it takes work. And the clients who set expectations that it doesn't take work are the same ones who then turn around and say, wow, man, no one's doing anything. It's like, well, you set expectations that it didn't have to do anything. So why are you upset? So when we talk about these frameworks, as we wrap up today with Andrea's knowledge, everything she's been sharing here, gang, as we talk about implementing frameworks for your distributors and your referral marketing companies and your affiliates, I hope you're hearing the power of setting proper expectations. Sometimes we think, oh, well, more people will say yes if we soften the expectations of what it takes to be successful. And the truth is you don't want those ones. You're going to be the same person turning around a week later saying, man, none of these people do anything. And that's not what you want. What you want to create is a place where you can set the proper expectations, invite people to participate, and as they're leveling up and doing the work in their life, they can see the path that success is possible in their world. And when you're clear with that, then and expectations are right, they don't feel like something's really far off. Because if you set expectations so easy, they think the problem's themselves. They think, well, maybe it's me. Maybe I just can't do this business because if it's so easy for everyone else and it's so hard for me, I must really be the problem. And that's not what you want. So you got to hear that. Now, again, one of the things I love most about getting a chance to work with Andrea over the years is she's not afraid to show up at your event and keynote on stage. And so as you're checking this out today, if you are thinking of including their book that's already sold 500,000 copies in your starter kits, you should reach out to her organization. We'll put their organization in the show notes. If you're thinking about inviting Andrea to speak at your event, she does get booked up. So please don't wait to the end. If you know your dates, please reach out and have Andrea come speak at your event, gang, or you're going to miss out because she'll be triple booked on that weekend and then you won't get her at your event. So I share all that to say, don't wait. Definitely reach out if you were captivated by her sharing today in this space. And it's all meant to give you a framework that you can follow. And so, Andrew, I'm so grateful for you just unpacking this today. Thank you so much for your time and for being here today. It's just such a pleasure to have you here for the forum.
It was my pleasure and fun conversation, Ben. Thank you.
And
Gail, thank
stuff.
You.
That's perfect.
Thank you.
With that, if you're watching on the stream, gang, and you haven't yet subscribed on Spotify or joined on the LinkedIn group, your next step is an invite-only community. DSEF is free for direct selling executives on LinkedIn. You can go to directSellingExecutiveForum.com, or you can go on LinkedIn and type in Direct Selling Executive Forum, and you'll be able to join the group. If you're on Spotify or YouTube, you can subscribe to the playlist. There are many episodes in this series. This has been such a exciting series to see all the people who are willing to come share both in our Women in Leadership series and in season 2 for the DSEF. And so it's been exciting just to see who's participating. And so if you haven't yet subscribed and got access to the rest of the episodes, there is more gold there. Don't let it go through your fingers, as Andrea shared earlier. Have an amazing day, everybody. Thank you so much for being here on the show today. Go make a difference with this information. Bye for now.